Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Baroud, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with Jassi Chadha, the co-founder, president, and CEO of Axtria.
So Jim, my story is that I'm an engineer who studied to be a mechanical engineer, and I actually grew up in India and did my engineering in India. But I decided to come to US for my master's degree and ended up doing a PhD. Went to school in Texas, and while I was in my grad school, I got fascinated by the technology entrepreneurs and of that, Sun Microsystems and Oracle and Microsoft and Dell Computers and so on. And then the new generation of companies being built, I2 technologies, Managistics for supply chain management and so on. I had a background in industrial engineering and saying I could do that. And so that's where the bug of entrepreneurship came. But I had to do my time. I got a job working for a healthcare consulting company in New Jersey. That's how I ended up coming to New Jersey and working in the pharma. And in over 25 years I've been here in New Jersey, never met anyone who didn't grow up in New Jersey who wants to move to New Jersey and live in New Jersey, and also wants to work for pharma industry, which is pretty unique. People don't grow up thinking what I want to work in the pharma industry. So I didn't pick either pharma or New Jersey, they picked me. Started a company with my brother in 2000 called MarketRx, which was fairly successful. The company got acquired by Cognizant in 2007. I started the data analytics practice for Cognizant, kind of laid the foundation, built the initial team, but then realized that, I was not cut out to work for a large global technology services company. Started the second company, Axtria, which is what I'm building as we speak. And this is a business that is now over 10 years old, but still growing very nicely. We are focused primarily in the life sciences industry and helping life sciences companies bring their products to market, put it in the hands of the patients. And we do that by actually providing software platforms for doing data analytics, business planning, and operations management for the global business.
Right. And now talk to us. There was a big announcement just recently about Axtria's funding and growth plan. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So Jim, both at MarketRx and at Axtria so far, except for the last few months, we have been extremely conservative in terms of being fiscally responsible. So even though we recognize that to build software products, build a very fast growing company at scale, serving global pharma companies, you need to invest a lot in terms of investment. But our model has been to grow as fast as possible without losing money. And that actually is very different from how a lot of software companies are built. So we had, and the second thing is that we know that it takes us a long time to build a sustainable company. And when we started Axtria, our plan was to build it for 15 to 20 years. We're 10 years into the journey, and it's very difficult to get institution capital which is patient for the next 15 to 20 years. So what we did, even though we wanted a lot of capital, but not institutional capital, so we have been playing with private capital. So, before this investment that we took from Bain Capital for $150 million, before that, we had actually already raised $60 million, 60. But almost all from private investments, including Navi and my own personal investments in the business. We partnered with Bain Capital. This is the Tech Opportunities Fund for that invest in technology companies that are fast-growing companies. And our hope is to continue the growth at scale and actually have a great financial exit in the next 5 to 10 years.
Great. So Axtria is how big now?
So we are a little over 2,000 employees. We work with close to 100 pharma life sciences companies. Our revenues are slightly more than $150 million a year.
Okay, great. And now we just come through COVID, right? And tell us your challenges and how things have gone for Axtria and you and your team.
Yeah. So the last 17 or 18 months that we have actually been living with, we started hearing about COVID in US in around February of 2020. And so, we are almost 17 months into it. And suddenly, in mid-March, everything just basically went virtual. Like most entrepreneurs, you start going back and looking in history and try to find trends, saying, is this going to be the technology bust of 2000, or is this going to be the financial crisis of 2008? And what lessons can you learn from those crises? Because a lot of very successful companies got wiped out, when those crises hit, which are market forces, but you couldn't do anything about it. So what we did is that in the end of March, beginning of April, we were very, very concerned. We were looking at how do you conserve cash, how do you basically get early warnings if something big negative is going to happen. This is the era when you were applying for PPP loans, there was a lot of fear in the market. In the next 2 months or so, this is now fast forwarding to May. What we saw was that our medical device customers were impacted pretty heavily because the surgeries had stopped. The pharma companies were getting impacted, but the patients were still taking prescription drugs, but the sales reps were all sitting at home. And the customers started coming to us as trusted partners, asking us, what can I do? And we had to pivot and change our solutions and our software to deal with sales reps sitting at home. But the customers, our pharma customers, were good partners. We did something which was unthinkable in the hindsight now, but that was that by the end of May, Jim, we decided that we were going to be completely different. It took a contrarian view. When our employees were all afraid that they were going to get laid off and they may not have a career or a future, we actually went back and assured everyone that we would not do any layoffs. We were going to pay 100% bonuses that we had accrued in 2019. We made all the promotions and the salary increase that we were planning to give them in April, we just gave them in June. And we strengthened away. So it was signaling. It was a signal to our employees and our customers in the market that we are financially very strong and we are here to do business. Long story short, 2020 was, from a business perspective, the best year we've ever had. We grew over 50% year over year in 2000. Our 5-year CAGR was 32%. And the fastest growth was when we were the largest. So the business has been good. It has been great. On the personal side of it, there has been more tragedies. Actually, so most of our employees are in US and in India. And, there were obviously employees who got impacted personally with COVID. But in March of 2021, when the second big wave of COVID hit India and the whole thing went bananas, we actually lost 5 very young employees to COVID, and a number of our employees lost their parents, their family members in India. So that was actually probably the biggest personal tragedy that we have seen because of COVID in the last year. So business did very well, but 2021, there were a lot of personal tragedies.
Wow, so sorry to hear that, Jassi. But tell us, obviously that speaks to your leadership of the company and the culture you've created. And as we all hear, talent is so hard to attract and keep. So I'm sure this went a long way to making your company's talent base much stronger and much more loyal. Tell us how you instill a culture of performance, productivity, empathy in Axtria.
Yeah. So Jim, at the end of it, I think, when you look at it at the individual level or at the company level, people want to work for a company or manager who they know that they can trust and who care about them. And in business, that's what empathy is. So we have to constantly signal that to our employees that we really, really care about their careers, their personal well-being, and then that they can trust us. We expect the company to do that. We expect the employees to do that. And very honestly, it's that simple. If the people who work in your team can actually trust you that you will take care of them, I think you're in a good place. So what we did, especially when you're going through a crisis, that's the perfect opportunity for the company to make some hard decisions and show. So not only did we decide to actually, pay out full bonuses and do promotions and make a commitment, no layoffs. As a matter of fact, we ended up actually hiring, 40% more employees from the time that we were before COVID. We ended up hiring 40% more employees. So people start seeing that signal. At the same time, we saw this golden opportunity because people had more time. They were sitting at home. We actually partnered with Coursera, and see what is happening in our industry is that the area of data analytics and technology changes very rapidly. We partnered with Coursera. We took some of the hardest and the 5 most well-designed courses in artificial intelligence and machine learning, and we paid, we called it learn and earn program. We ended up spending close to $1 million putting cash in the pockets of the employees, fully recognizing that they're going to do this on their own personal time. That more than 450 people learned and got certified in AI ML during pandemic. So some of the other things that we have done, Jim, is that we have a very strong performance management culture, a very well-defined process. Even when we were very young, we invested in HR platform like Success Factors, where the employees can actually get the information. Everything is transparent. We have an e-learning platform which has thousands and thousands of hours of learning material that we have created, which is part of the learning platform. During the time of crisis, everyone talked about it, how it's very important to communicate at all levels, whether it was doing virtual town halls or whether it was sending out frequent communication as to where we are. One of the biggest questions that people have been asking is that what's the future of work? Am I going to come back to office? Are you going to require me to come back to office? Can I move to Hawaii and still continue working for Axtria, right? So how do you anticipate those questions and answer them? And by the way, sometimes the answers are not very popular, but that is also part of building a culture which is transparent, which is based on values and honesty, and that enables you to have some of those tough conversations where the employees say, "Oh no, I was expecting a different answer." Well, this is the answer because this is what works for everyone else and for the well-being of the whole community, so to speak. So those are some of the things that we have done in terms of values and culture and building a great performance culture in the organization.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. Now, Jassi, how do you predict we will go back to offices, or how is Axtria forecasting? I know there's a lot of uncertainty still.
Correct.
So I don't want you to get out your crystal ball, but tell us what you are envisioning, because I know you feel culture is so important to the business, but it's hard to do when everyone's virtual. So tell us what you're thinking.
So Jim, this is a great question, and very honestly, no one has an answer. And as a matter of fact, I'm amazed at how very large companies who want to project themselves as very progressive companies have made announcements after announcements, and this is what we're going to be like. We're going to be virtual permanently, and then having to come back 6 months later and saying, never mind, I said that, we're not going to do that. So so one of the things we were, again, this is in all humility and transparency, saying we're not smart enough to know what the future is going to be, because we don't want to make any big announcements while we're still going through the crisis. The pandemic is still going on. So it's very difficult to make announcements how the future of work is going to be post-pandemic. But you can get some ideas because you have to learn. So look, None of us were actually ever expecting to work virtually permanently. But having said that, for the last 16 months, we've been working virtually. All our offices globally in US, India, and Europe are closed. All our employees are working remotely. So we know it works. So the work gets done. The question is, then why don't just do it? So there are two aspects of it. We are a company that is built on ideas and innovation. We build products. We are also a company in which we hire a lot of fresh graduates from colleges who come into the organization. We are often the first job for them. And this is going to be the foundation of what they're going to do in their careers. A lot of what we do, even though we have great learning and training programs, is apprenticeship. You learn by interacting with other people. You learn from how to behave, how to become a good manager, how to become a good project leader, how do you deliver analytics, how do you build software products. So in one of the town halls I was doing in summer, I have two kids in college. They were both home. I invited them to just listen in on the town hall. And my daughter actually made a very astute observation. He said, I was amazed with how many people were asking you that can they continue working remotely forever? And she said, they both my kids go to Purdue, and Purdue University was one of the the most well-managed schools during pandemic. They were fully open, but with proper checks and balances, that they have had zero hospitalizations during COVID. And she said, this is like going to a university. I can take all the courses online and stay at home, but that wouldn't be the same university experience. That's akin to, we can all do the work doing online courses and online classes, but it won't be the same work culture and environment of being in person. So what I feel, Jim, is going to be that we will not require everyone to be in the office. But at the same time, we fully recognize that people learn more, collaborate more, get inspired, find their role models, have a bigger connection with the team and bigger connection with the company when they work together. When they have water cooler conversation, when they go have happy hours, when they grab lunch together. You can't do that in a virtual environment. So that's kind of a very long answer to your question as to where.
No, I think that's great. And I know you have beautiful offices. I've been there. So you definitely want to put them to use.
Absolutely.
Jassi, most people don't know this, but you work with your brother.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I have a lot of experience, and I know people out there work in family businesses. Talk to us how you make it work.
Absolutely, Jim. So I think the short answer to your question is it's great, but it's not easy. So my brother and I, we are, even though I'm older, but, we're only 16 months apart. So we are literally like twin brothers. We grew up together. We have no other siblings. And, we've done almost everything together growing up. So there is that sibling rivalry, but at the same time, we are each other's best friend. And that really helped. But from a business and professional perspective, Jim, what really helped was that our experiences and our skill sets are very complementary. So I grew up in math, analytics, consulting, and pharma. My brother grew up in working in multiple industries, from natural gas to Goldman Sachs to and those industries, but doing technology with computer science, building software products. So what we do at Axtria is bring the business expertise, the analytics, the consulting with software together, and so our skill sets are very, very complementary. So that really helps quite a bit. In some ways, when we talk about entrepreneurship, and I often tell people that if you want to be founders, make sure you're not the only founder. You should have co-founders, and co-founders who have complementary skills and complementary personalities. So skills are not the only thing. You should also have complementary personality. So even though we are very similar in many ways, our personalities are very different. I am, I am the eternal optimist. For me, everything is going to work. And my brother is a lot more pragmatic, because he has to build it. And he looks at this thing, are you okay, there's no way we can build the software in 4 months. It's going to take us 3 years. So having that different attitude in life, at the same time, I'm very comfortable just letting it go. And my brother is super aggressive, and he's very ambitious, and he's very hardworking. He's a great leader. He's a great communicator. So having that different personality and different skill sets has worked out. One of the rules that they tell you, Jim, is you never hire anyone you can't fire. And when you work with your family or your best friend, that actually makes it very difficult, because if things don't work out, it's going to ruin your personal relationship, and that's a huge risk, and sometimes it's not worth taking. But for me, I've been very fortunate that by taking the risk, what it has given me is someone who's not only very good and very capable, but also someone who I can trust, with my eyes closed. And that's a huge advantage in business, as you know.
Right. Those are great insights. So Jassi, tell us about what you're seeing in the industry, right? You just got this big investment. Tell us what you're seeing for Axtria, and then in the industry in general. Where do you want to be 5 years from now?
Yeah. So Jim, there are some major macro trends, and some of them are trends that we have taken advantage of. So a lot of people ask me what's the difference between our previous company MarketRx, which is also focused on doing data analytics and software in the pharma industry, and what is the difference between Axtria? Well, the fundamental difference is that we have cloud now. We did not have cloud when we were building MarketRx. The technology stack of big data technologies, AI, ML, business process automation, none of those technology stack existed when, a decade ago we were building, or 15 years ago we were building the previous company. So what we see in the technology world is that it has become a lot more easier for startups to build enterprise software at scale, because you have the Amazons of the world, the Azures of the world to give you the infrastructure. You have the whole technology, and now it's becoming no code and so on. And you can actually, it's what's fascinating today is that if you have a good sense of business, you can actually write AI ML programs without actually knowing AI ML. Think about how fascinating that is. So from a big trend perspective, what we see is that any business process that was dependent on people is going to become obsolete, because what we all know is that in the long run, the software is going to do what people do today. And embedding analytics, particularly AI ML, in the software is going to enable the software to become more intelligent. But it's not about intelligence, it's actually making it autonomous. So people say that software is going to eat the world. Well, actually, it's the intelligence that is going to eat the software, provided it becomes autonomous. We're already seeing examples of that. Our aircraft fly with autonomous systems. Most people don't realize that. Actually, the pilots do very little, by the way, flying their airplanes. It's the systems that fly there. Cars are becoming fairly autonomous. Think about it. Every aspect of what we do, what we have done with our own hands, a lot of that is going to be done with software. In the pharma world, what we are hoping is that the pharma, which has been always, where the lifetime value of the customer is very high, they are going to invest a lot more in software and systems to do away with the manual process, so they can bring their drugs that they develop to the market a lot more faster. The best example today is Moderna, which is a software company that does biology, which has the ability to take the DNA of the virus, go from designing the drugs to chemistry to biology, is less than 40 days. That's the power of software and integrated process. Just imagine if we can actually find there is a disease and we can develop drugs in 40 days. That is what the future of pharma and life sciences is, and we want to play a part in that.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating times, right? So, and with personalized medicine, so are we going to see technology, AI, et cetera, help find vaccines to other diseases going forward? Is that how you see things?
Absolutely, Jim. Actually, in our own lifetime, and I fully recognize I'm a middle-aged man, so I'm not very young. In our lifetime, uh, most of the major diseases that are inflicted in our society, which is the cause of death and suffering, will be treatable and preventable. From diabetes to cancer is going to be not only treatable, they will be preventable.
Wow. So, Jassi, we went through your whole sort of career there, and you're doing great things. But we know you've obviously gone through some ups and downs, and a lot of people. And you sold your company, right? Market RX. You could have retired pretty much, right? So, I know a lot of people are thinking about what's next, what's in their future, taking stock, especially after this, as we've gone through, and almost hopefully to the end of this pandemic. Um, can you share with us just one thing, one bit of advice for people in general as they think about the changes ahead or resetting?
Yeah. So Jim, a lot of what I'm going through right now is something is that I developed this framework when I was just beginning to become an entrepreneur, and some lessons you learn all along. So a lot of people actually talk about the work-life balance, right, between your family, your personal interest, and your professional interest, right? And most people go through their life without being very clear what the priorities are. And if you're not clear and you think you can optimize all three of them, you're going to definitely fail. And if you fail, you're going to be unhappy. And that's what actually was part of the reason why we sold Market RX and then we started Axtria. Actually, that was part of that whole framework, because on one hand, when I sold Market RX, at that time we had two kids and they were both pretty young, right? So they were 8 and 10 years old. And as a father, I was going to be their role model. Can you imagine the kids who live in a beautiful house, travel the world in business class, and go to private education, and they see their father sitting around at home not doing anything? What kind of a role model that father would be? Believe it or not, it sounds pretty crazy. That was one of the motivation for me to get back and actually do something again. But I can't say that I'm doing it just for that. I have a passion for analytics. I have a passion for building software products, and what the current opportunities are enabling me to being on the cutting edge of actually driving that data analytics innovation, building autonomous software products that actually going to solve the problems of healthcare for the world. So think about it. It's a great kind of a cause, so to speak, or a mission. But personally, one of the other things that you have to do is that you have to find your passions. So for me and my wife, our passion has always been entrepreneurship and education. And with when we started having extra money to invest and contribute, we didn't really just write checks. You get a lot of people come and saying, give me this donation, that donation. We always kind of looked at this thing saying, can we create something from the long-term sustainable perspective and doing that? And for us, for education, that was in terms of creating chairs and endowments. For entrepreneurship, it was actually creating, supporting organizations who are singularly focused on entrepreneurship. TIE is one of them. There are many other organizations who do that, so that we can actually really make an impact in the society that we all live in and the communities that we all benefit from. So for us, this is the time for us to give back rather than take, because when we were young, we took so much from the communities and the society. This is our time for us to give back.
Great, great. Well, thanks for your continued leadership there. Speaking about young people, Jassi, what about, what kind of advice can you give young people as they think about what they're going to study, as things are changing so rapidly?
Yeah. So there, Jim, actually, I'm influenced by my own little bit personal experience, and I will share that experience, because this is where the kids these days are very well informed because they have so much different sources of information. Parents are only one of them. This is the advice I gave my two older kids who are both in college. I believe that you should actually invest and study in something which is very broad based, that keeps your options open. Because one of the things as I went through my own career and life was, you don't know what you don't know. And if you think you found your passion in a very narrow area and you're going to go study that, that may or may not actually be your passion when you graduate, or 5 years or 10 years from now. And then you may not have very many options. So if you want to study engineering, I wholeheartedly believe that you should actually go study the classical engineering, from industrial engineering to mechanical to civil, electrical, computer engineering, and so on, as compared to actually going out and actually doing something very specific like a biotechnology or biomedical, because you can always specialize in that. In most of the specializations, you actually still need a master's or a PhD to be really good at that. But you can actually get a very good experience. So, if you want to get into liberal arts and, want to, go to the classics as compared to very specific areas. That's my personal, been my personal philosophy.
Great, great. No, that's really good advice. So, Jassi, thanks for doing this. But when we usually end with a poem or a saying, what would you like to share with us?
So there are actually, Jim, there is one quote from Sam Walton, who's the founder of Walmart, and he had a very simple saying when he wanted to actually talk to his business leaders. He said, "Our job is to make ordinary people do extraordinary things." And that is in some ways so simple and yet so powerful.
I love it. I love it. That's a great way to end. Jassi, thank you so much for doing this. We wish you much success.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you in person very soon.
Absolutely, Jim. It's a pleasure talking to you every time I talk to you.
Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.